Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk movies. If it isn't obvious, I'm a Terminator fanboy. You got a Terminator movie down the pipe? You've piqued my interest. Like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, there's just something inherently interesting about the lore of the Terminator franchise. Machines taking over and destroying the world, a seemingly never-ending war between man and machine, going back in time to try and tilt the power of balance and either destroy humanity outright or give it a fighting chance, the franchise has somehow become more relevant as time has gone on. Smartphones, legit development of artificial intelligence, Japan is going to be our downfall, I swear. But it's hardly a wonder how and why the franchise continues to this day. Before tackling Dark Fate, though, I want to gloss over the other films and let everyone know what I thought about those. Let's kick this puppy off with the one that started it all. It's so strange to think about where the franchise has been, and this is the movie that started it all. A literal fever dream from when James Cameron was sick in Rome and literally thought up a sci-fi version of the Grim Reaper, and here we are. Yeah, it's a product of the 80s, from the style of clothing, the synthesized score, that awful stop motion, Arnold's hair. But you know what makes this movie stand the test of time? Passion. This movie was cheap, but it has passion in every frame. The efforts made to make this thing look as amazing as it did can still be appreciated even today. I don't know about the rest of everyone else, but I sincerely miss Michael Biehn. Kyle Reese was such a unique kind of character. He was a stalwart soldier, dedicated and loyal, knows what he's doing despite the limitations of the time period in effectively dealing with the T-800. But he was also very vulnerable, even fragile. He's known only war his entire life, a bleak, post-apocalyptic hellscape, but now he's in a polar opposite place with color, life, conflict caused by our own hands. God, there's a great deleted scene that highlights this where Reese breaks down at how beautiful the world looks, and it hurts him. It legit breaks my heart, man. Then it's offset by his awkward acting. Jesus, close your mouth, my dude. But it's stuff like that that really sold him as a character for me. And Sarah has a great arc as this plain Jane server who gets caught up in all this insanity, starting off panicky and evolving into someone that's totally badass in her own right. Small movie or no, this still kicks ass. The best is yet to come, but you know what? It's nice to see where the best came from.
I'll be back.
Yeah, bitch! The holy grail of sci-fi action. It's like everybody says, contender for the best sequel. It is one of, if not the best action movie ever made. It's got everything. Gripping drama, incredible stunts and effects, both practical and digital. Amazing acting, memorable and badass action. This movie hasn't aged a day. And of course, is one of my all-time favorite movies. I know, you're shocked. But here's why. I saw this movie as a kid, and it was the first sci-fi movie I ever saw that was both smart and heartfelt. Sure, Star Wars has a rich lore to explore and paves the way for imaginative worlds, aliens, and action set pieces, but none of the Star Wars movies had a message for humanity. None of them showed us a dark future if we didn't keep ourselves in check, lest we be destroyed by our own creations. And none of them said that there is hope for us. Even James Cameron's most recent passion projects, Avatar, bringing forth environmental awareness, does little to impact hearts and minds. And I defend that movie, but even I can tell you that Avatar is no Terminator 2. Not by a long shot. And I won't lie. I can be a crybaby with movies. It honestly doesn't take much. I've even cried during bad movies. but I can acknowledge manipulation in hindsight. But T2 is genuine. I cried when I was a kid. I cried during the 3D re-release in 2017. And I am always left thinking and hoping for the best when it comes to humanity. Corny? Sure. But few movies leave that kind of long-lasting impact. By all accounts, Terminator 2 is a masterclass of sci-fi storytelling. Nay, a masterclass of storytelling, period.
Hasta la vista, baby.
But now we get to the sequels. The most controversial addition to a franchise ever. One of them. But you know what? My opinion might surprise you, so let's get into it. I don't hate it. Yeah, I'm just gonna come out and say it. But before y'all start thrashing me in the comments, let me just say, I get why. Any follow-up to Terminator 2 is unnecessary, and something of a betrayal of it. T2 ends on a hopeful but ambiguous note, but T3 is saying, fuck all that, give me nostalgia money! And to make matters worse, what's the message of this movie? Humanity's fate is sealed. Fuck you. Get ready to die, meatbags. Slit your wrists now. Hork down that rat poison, because all that's waiting for you is nuclear fallout, and even if you survive that, there's war against an enemy that evolves faster than you. Fuck you. This ending paints a bleak and empty future for us. It's so hard to defend this movie's existence, and is an utter betrayal of T2. So, why am I so forgiving? I guess it's because T3 leaves such little impact compared to its predecessors that I don't truly acknowledge it as canon to the story. It's not like it's directed by James Cameron after all, but even that isn't a deciding factor. You just need a good idea. But T3 wasn't. I guess to me, it's a glorified fan film, a what-if kind of scenario to not take seriously. When in that light, I can look at the flick differently. What do I like about it? Mostly the TX. Over the years, I've become something of a fan of Kristanna Loken, mostly thanks to Mortal Kombat Conquest, a prequel series to the '95 flick. Really underrated if you ask me. But I was heartbroken to see her slumming it with Uwe Boll. Hey, I love a dumb, bold KG movie as much as the next masochist, but not when it comes to actors I really like and had lots of hopes for. In retrospect, I hoped that Loken would be in a new wave of action heroines like Kate Beckinsale. Underworld came out the same year. But I guess that wasn't meant to be. Still, I enjoyed the Michael Bay-esque action. Arnold hadn't missed a beat as the T-800, or T-850 in this case, and Claire Danes was pretty fun as Kate Brewster. I'm gonna hit some hypocritical territory here, but I think the ending is kind of brilliant, at least within the context of this story. Divorce the franchise as a whole from T3, and this was the only one you'd seen. Honestly, it'd be a decent enough action flick. The stakes are there, the acting is good enough to get you invested in the outcome and to feel for them. And in its own way, the ending does provide a sense of hope that the human race will survive to fight back. It's only once you see the other films when you realize how much of a cash-in this is. Still, I say this movie is inconsequential. A pointless continuation, but far from the most offensive and easy to ignore.
Desire is irrelevant. I am a machine.
Surely with the negative reception of that one, no one would dare try again. In 6 years. Once again, I don't hate this movie. This is a movie that justifies its existence. Even before T3, I wanted a movie that delved into the war itself, unlike a lot of fans to my understanding. No one ever accused me of being normal. So how does it hold up 10 years later? I still like it, but I definitely see the problems now. Let's start with what I like. You will never convince me that this movie didn't have all the right ingredients. Taking place in the war, check. Bryce Dallas Howard as Kate Brewster, Anton Yelchin as Kyle Reese, rest in peace, good sir, and post The Dark Knight Christian Bale as John Connor, triple check. Also, some interesting ideas. Connor isn't the leader of the Resistance yet. Diverse-looking Terminators, as well as throwbacks to old ones, and a surprising amount of practical effects, it definitely scratched some itches. The aesthetic and grizzled backgrounds, it's just awesome to me. But all of these components, all they succeed at doing is guaranteeing that I don't dislike the film. That doesn't mean that it makes it good. So, let me acknowledge why. Lack of focus. Why was Marcus Wright a character? I know the original ending was something like John Connor would have died and his likeness would have been put on Marcus, who would then go evil and kill Kate and Kyle Reese. But ultimately, no matter which version we'd get, Marcus is a character that didn't need to exist. He's there to somehow teach us what it means to be human. Again, T2 did this better. Stop asking a question that we're already wrestling with and definitely don't give us an answer that a 9-year-old can come up with. And, that anal fucking romance between Marcus and Blair Williams. God damn it. And I really like Moon Bloodgood. Look, there's a lot that didn't work. But what did is what got me through the movie and keeps me coming back to it. You don't like it, I get it. But I do like it.
You tried killing my mother, Sarah Connor. You killed my father, Kyle Reese. You will not kill me.
I don't hate this either. Once again, let me acknowledge that this is the worst of the franchise, and let me also express that I understand why no one likes it. The failure of Terminator 3 is thinking that its ideas were good enough to continue a story that wrapped about as perfectly as possible. Its lack of impact stems from easily ignoring it. The failure of Salvation was having great ideas, but botching the execution. Also, easily ignored. Not for me, I still kinda like it. However, the failure of Genesis is a bit more magnificent. Thinking that its idea was so good that it can just rewrite the canon of the overall story, somehow making the Terminator the parent figure to Sarah rather than John, and make a franchise out of it. Obviously, this failed, and thank God for it. But what about it makes me on the forgiving side? Second verse, same as the first. I just see it as another glorified fan film. It's like some pretentious college film student thought to himself, what if it was Sarah that saw the Terminator as a father figure rather than John? And what if John Connor was the bad guy? I'd say spoilers if you were missing out on something, but even if you went in blind, this movie would not be good. So with that in mind, I enjoy seeing Arnold back as the Terminator after a 12-year absence. I legit enjoy the attention and detail in recreating the opening scene of the first Terminator flick. It's not 100% spot on, but it's still pretty fun. And I do kind of enjoy seeing the Terminator act more parental in its own Terminator-like way. That it holds on to pictures of Sarah when she was a child. It's little touches like that that make me interested in the idea, at the very least. Sure, it was done better in Terminator 2, but this is still taking that step forward and making something interesting. Okay, that step is more like a half-assed tiptoe that ultimately doesn't leave much of an impact, but I still kind of like that element, I guess. Still, it's hard to ignore how much of a downgrade Sarah Connor's character is compared to the first two movies. Kyle Reese doesn't retain his fragility that Michael Biehn brought in his iteration of the character. The blatant attempts at trying to cash in on some of that Marvel movie formula by throwing in a fun soundtrack, the beyond confusing time travel logic that makes you apologize to Avengers Endgame, the line crossing over the top action, giving Skynet an actual face and bland personality, the lame attempt at making Skynet itself an app on everyone's phone. It's terrible. Horrible. It's a mess of a film. It's just lucky that I enjoy Arnold and Emilia Clarke as actors. Otherwise, I would have hated this movie like everybody else. As is, I don't, but I don't blame those that do.
Old. They're not obsolete. Not yet.
That's it for the movies, but there's one more Terminator property that I wanted to gloss over. And I kind of mean that because this video is getting pretty long as is. And that property is... The ill-fated Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles lasted only 2 seasons. But I guess third verse same as the first. Don't hate this show. In fact, I rather like it. In fact, I think if there's any follow-up to Terminator that got it close to right, it'd be this one. Again, it's hard-pressed to make a sequel to T2 and properly justify it, but for what the show was, I liked it. Summer Glau as a new Terminator protector, Lena Headey pre-Game of Thrones fame was a dead ringer for a next-gen Sarah Connor. Thomas Dekker as the new John Connor, the solid new score. It honestly hit a lot of good notes that first season. Minus a secret brother that Kyle Reese supposedly had. You know, the more I think about it, I think this show is the reason why I hate that cliche of secret siblings that were never referenced. Now, certainly the first season is a little more memorable and easier to follow, because the second season, especially the second half, man, it gets convoluted and it quickly becomes forgettable. But there is one glorious addition to the Terminator franchise. That's right, motherfuckers. Shirley Manson is in this show, and she's a T-1000. She is the best part of Season 2. From the moment she's introduced to the closing of the series. Is it sad that this is how I eventually became a casual fan of garbage? Anyway, solid first season. Shirley Manson is the only reason to watch Season 2. I recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. Nothing amazing, but a somewhat more valiant attempt to keep the franchise alive than the movie counterparts. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Hope to see you soon.